There were two battles on April 12th of the Civil War. The first battle was the Battle of Fort Sumter on April 12th of 1861. This is the beginning, the first battle of the Civil War. It is the day the Civil War began. The second battle that happened on April 12th, 3 years later, was the battle at Fort Pillow. The battle at Fort Sumter was incredibly proper. It was detail-oriented, perfect timing. They went back and forth. They had this battle. A bunch of cannon mortars were shot off with these giant guns, 10-inch mortars. Somehow, out of all these mortars, nobody died, right? 36 hours later, the Union fort is surrendered to the Confederate side, and the Union and the Confederates meet and have a discussion over how this transfer of power is going to happen. And the Union agrees that they're going to have the chance to do a 100-gun salute to mark the end of the battle. And they proceed to shoot off 100, cannon to mark. And that is actually the only moment that anybody lost lives during this. A Union soldier was killed by a explosion before the gun went off early, and a second man was, according to the records, mortally wounded, which sounds a lot like being killed, but I guess maybe not in that moment. But between 1 and 2, depending on how you read that record, men died during their very proper 100-gun salute to end the battle. Mary Chestnut, who's famous for writing these kind of firsthand diaries of the Civil War, was in her house, just very, very close to the shoreline where this is happening. And she writes that everybody was so nervous during this battle that they couldn't take their meals at the table during this 36 hours. Instead, they had their tea trays served to them so they could be sitting and kind of having snacks. She doesn't mention who's serving the tea. 3 years later, on April 12th of 1864, is the Battle of Fort Pillow. The Battle of Fort Pillow is a completely different fight, right? So there's Major Lionel F. Booth for the Union side and General Bedford Forrest on the Confederate side. This is a knockdown, drag-out sort of fight, and becomes incredibly important because it doesn't seem like people played by even the rules of war. Forrest brought his men into the fort, and it appears that there was pretty much just a massacre of Union soldiers. About 300 men died that seem to have died probably after they surrendered, quite a few of them. The reasons we know that are data, and I'm a big fan of data, so I'll give you the two numbers that I think really matter here. The first one is that you can look at the actual event at Fort Pillow, the number of men who were killed. If you were the white troops, 60% of them survived. And if you were black troops, 20% of them survived, right? The other thing that you can know that this was a massacre, although, folks debate, is that when you have a war, there's different injury to fatality ratios, right? And different kinds of war and different kinds of battles have different injury to fatality ratio. The Civil War in general had a 2 injuries to 1 fatality ratio, which was actually really a huge problem because it meant that everybody was getting injured in terrible, gruesome ways, but not dying. But then they didn't have the field set up to handle this. It was a huge problem that this 2 mortality or 2 injuries to 1 mortality happened. At Fort Pillow, there were 2 deaths to every 1 injury of the Unions. And the majority of these deaths were of black soldiers. Also, General Bedford Forrest ended up being the first Grand Wizard of the Ku Klux Klan after the war. So